When I first started working on my preliminary exercise, I was unaware about the different conventions used in music magazines and about how it all comes together. Programs such as Photoshop and InDesign were new to me. I also had no knowledge about the music magazine market and its institutions. I did not know how to attract an audience of a specific gender, age range, or interest. My student magazine was composed very unprofessionally. I now find it noticeable that I have not used margins, as the cover lines are at different distances from the page borders. The photo is also not very effective, as I feel there is not as much connection with the audience as in my music magazine. There are also a lot of empty spaces which could have included more cover lines. I didn't like the design either, as all it consists of is rectangle. Much wasn't so different about the contents page. It was very simple and the design was straightforward. Many of the decisions were made without much thought, such as the usage of images and page numbers. Also, the cover contents repeatedly uses the images of the same students, which shows there is less and or poor quality content in the magazine. Throughout this project, I studied about different types of magazines and learned how they target different audiences. I also learned about publishers and how magazines make money. Doing this allowed me to know how many pages and what kind of content was to be included in my magazine. I learned about many new magazine terminologies and about the various conventions used in magazine production. By the time it came to designing my front cover, I had developed a lot of skills in Photoshop. I looked at many examples of cover photos in rock magazines. I learned about how I wanted my models to pose, what kind of background and lighting I wanted, and knew that the orientation was to be portrait. All these added to my photography skills. This allowed me to replace my background with a gradient to show as if it were a studio photo. I placed the cover image so that the masthead and cover lines fit close to perfectly around it, almost as if the image was taken for that specific issue. I learned about the trends in magazines, for example having eyebrows, and included them in my own cover to make it look more professional. I also added a promo for free posters, showing that I now knew how to attract my target audience. My student magazine wouldn't include a barcode, as it probably wouldn't be purchased, but in my music magazine I added one. In InDesign, I learned how to work with text and create interesting mastheads. This skill could even be used to work on titles, logos, etc. The first thing I did for my music magazine contents page was to set up margins so that the text and pictures aligned well. By this stage, I had developed a house style which I used throughout the magazine. My main aim became to relate to the target audience. I feel that this is a lot more appealing to young viewers than the student magazine's content page. For making the contents page, I made a magazine flat plan to know how to arrange my content. This also was not done for the preliminary exercise. Finally, I had probably developed most skills in creating my two-page spread. When I was collecting raw information, I developed research skills and how to refer according to the Harvard referencing system. The first time I used InDesign, I found it very difficult and felt that it would limit me from improving the quality, as I was beginning with Photoshop and InDesign. However, after a few class tutorials, I learned how to create columns for my text and adjust photos. I learned that I could add all the features of a professional magazine, such as the title, a basic introduction, a header, a footer, and even a drop cap. Unlike my student magazine cover, the images and text were perfectly aligned. I would not have been able to do any of this at the preliminary stage.